Hello, everyone. Today we are going to start looking at the 1968 candidates quarterfinals between Mikhail Tal and Svetozar Gligoric. And Gligoric had qualified for this cycle of the candidates by coming in third in the 1967 Sus Interzonal, and Tal had qualified by defeating Larson in the last cycle of the candidates in 1965. Uh, so this was quite an interesting match. Tal had for his seconds Sasanko and his longtime trainer Koblenz, and they specifically worked on the Smyslov variation in the Roy Lopez because that was a pet variation of Gligoric. So they basically tried to uh, find a hole in it and defeat him there. A little bit more about Gligoric. He was a very strong player, 12-time Yugoslavian champion. Um, in the 50s and 60s, he was like in the top 10 in the world, and he's known for his famous book "I Play Against Pieces," which uh, it says a lot about his personality because, of course, he's not talking about just playing against a specific piece like a knight or a knight on the rim or something like that. In a chess sense, basically what he's saying is that his style of chess or his chess philosophy was not to switch styles based on different characteristics of certain players or to develop in some type of animosity against the opponent. Um, as say for instance Fischer, like where he felt like he had to, have some type of hatred almost toward his opponent in order to play well. Or some players um, adopt the philosophy of playing the person, right? Not the board, they play the person. So, for instance, a player like Lasker, who would, uh, sense certain, traits about a person. For instance, if they were a real attacking player, you know, then they play in the way that would provoke them, to attack and say overextend themselves. Well, Gligoric, his chess philosophy was just to play, you know, basically the pieces. Whatever the position was on the board, he looked at the position, evaluated the position, and he never switched his style based on, okay, well, I'm playing Tao, so he's an attacking player. Well, I need to start playing the Carol Khan to to try to slow this guy down. He played the same whether he was playing Fischer, Tao, Botvinnik, whoever. So that says a lot, and it's an interesting approach. This is game one. Here, Tal had the white pieces, and Gligoric had the black pieces. Again, this took place in Belgrade, in the country formerly known as Yugoslavia, and Tal had a chance to uncork his novelty that he had prepared against Gligoric with his seconds, Sasanko and Koblenz. So here you have it, Roy Lopez. Okay, Castle, and it's all pretty typical. In here you have the introduction to the Smyslov variation. Okay, so H6 is the beginning of the so-called Smyslov variation, and now I know this can be confusing because um, there's other variations called the Smyslov variation also. For instance, Queen D7, attributed to Smyslov. Um, this move, 3G6, is also contributed to Smyslov. And to understand this, you must go back to the glory days, um, for Soviet chess when the Russian school absolutely dominated chess, especially after the death of Alyekin, when Botvinnik and company took over um, the world of chess. Basically, they named every single variation possible after their players. So that's why many of the names of these openings, even today, have Russian names. So a lot of redundancy. Some openings have two names. Um, for instance, the Shigorin line in the Rui Lopez. Um, let's just go there real quick after H3, knight A5. Here's the Shigorin line, right? But um, there's also another um, line attributed to Shigorin, and here also. So a lot of a lot of redundancy here. So just try to bear with me. This is known as the Smyslov line, and basically the idea is real simple. Um, it's Rook F E8, and then the idea is to follow with Bishop F8 after that. So in the game, we see Tal plays D4, Rook E8, Knight BD2, and then Bishop F8. That's the basic idea. And the reason why H6 is inserted is to prevent the move on Knight G5 being played by White. So, for example, in the Zaitsev variation, which is Bishop B7, it's possible for White to, play Knight G5, for example, to make it difficult to play moves like Rook B8. For instance, let's say, I'm sorry, after Bishop B7, that's how it goes: D4, Rook E8, and then Knight G5. Black has no choice but to go back and defend here. And of course, if you're playing white pieces, you probably wouldn't want to draw. But this line saves a tempo by not inserting H6. So basically, the Zaitsev line, which was played by Karpov for many years, was looked at as an improved variation of Smyslov's line. A Smyslov's line gives White the time to make the maneuver, of the knight B, D2 to F1, G3, E3. And also the downside of H6 is that the king side can become a little weak. So there you have it. There's a little background in the Smyslov variation of Rui Lopez. Anyway, this was Gligoric's specialty. If you look in the database, he probably has the most games in this line. So Tal had prepared. So D4, Rook E8, Knight BD2, Bishop F8, Knight F1, and that's another thing about H6. It gives time to White to complete this maneuver with the knight all the way to G3. Knight A5, Bishop C2, Knight C4, A4, now D5, B3, D takes, Knight takes, E4, Knight takes, Bishop takes, Rook takes, and now Queen D5, Rook G4, and now we see Tal building up his attack on the king side. Black's play is usually on the queen side. Knight A5, and remember, this is all Tal's preparation. He had prepared this line, and he was blitzing out his moves at this point. Bishop takes H6, Knight takes B3, and then Rook A3. This was Tal's big surprise at the time, as far as preparation was concerned. Again, this is pre-computer engine, but together with the second, he had uncorked this move right here. Of course, the idea is that if Bishop If the bishop takes, leaves the defense of g7, that rook g7 is going to lead to a swift end for white. Excuse me, for black here. So for instance, after king h8 and knight g5. So as the story goes, Gligoric thought for a long time here and did not take the rook, of course, and just simply played b takes a4, rook takes a4, rook a b8, rook takes a6, e takes d4, c takes d4, c5 from Gligoric, bishop e3, rook b4, rook g5, queen b7, attacking the rook, and rook h6, and we see what looks like a menacing attack on the horizon for Tal here. I must admit, this is a scary looking configuration. You have one of the great attacking players of all time, and then all of his pieces are literally right in front of your king here. So Gligoric, has nerves of steel to go into this. So knight takes d4, and rook b1. Okay, and I'm sure Tal seeing all of this. He simply brings the bishop back to c1, protecting. And now queen b2. It's interesting, if c takes d4, then queen h5, right? Rook takes c1, king h2, and queen c7. And there's no more than a perpetual here. So for instance, g3, g6, rook h8, and just checks back and forth. If white tries to play that, which is natural, then the king just comes out, and you get the same type of situation, and it just repeats again. So very interesting, but who knows if he actually saw it, if Gligoric saw that at the board, or his instincts just told him to avoid snatching that knight. But bishop c1, and then he played queen b2, exploiting this pin on the bishop. Now here, it was Tal's turn, and Tal decided that queen h5 was the best move, and it looks like just a clear, win. Like if you were walking by this position in the tournament hall, you would just think that this game is over. You look for some checks, and you figure that black is not going to have enough. But in hindsight, Tal probably should have preserved his piece and played the move knight b3. Okay, so knight b3, in a sensational way, kind of holds together Tal's idea over here, because now you see the bishop on c1 is protected, and if queen takes b3, then queen h5. This is just some amazing stuff. Like you can't expect, even a great Tal like to see something like this. And then bishop d6 check. Rook takes d6. Now queen b1. And this is a strong move. Queen h6 here. Queen to h7. Queen f6. And white holds an advantage here, actually, in this position. That's the constant attacking onslaught in the position. It's really hard for black. Black would have to be walking on eggshells. So I'm sure Tal might have looked at this, but again, it's very hard to decide which is better, knight b3 or just leave the knight and just continue on. And this is what Tal did. There's not much difference in the position, but what happens is since the queen, right, queen captured on c1, since the queen um, captures on c1, the queen is now in a position to, be able to play queen to h1 right away. Right, the queen is just in a better position than it would be if it had captured on b3. Also, well, I shouldn't even have to make this point, but not queen takes d4, of course, because then simply rook h8. So everything has to be with check from black. So queen takes c1 was played by Gligoric. King h2, bishop d6 check. Right, only move giving up the piece. Rook takes d6, and now again benefiting from the queen being on the dark squares as opposed to the light squares. He has this move queen f4 check, and he's able to pick up this rook now. Where in the other line, the queen wouldn't have been able to be in positions to pick up the rook on d6. Rook g3, sorry. Queen d6, knight f5, and we can see now Gligoric is up the exchange and has an initiative. I mean, he's counterattacking. It's not just like he's just being attacked here. So rook e1, queen takes f7 check. Beautiful move by Tal. I mean, really the only move. Note also that the rook on g3 is pinned, so don't be thinking about rook takes g7. Queen takes f7, relying on the fork tactic here. King takes f7 check, and knight d6 check. King e6, rook g6, knight f5. In a valiant effort by Tal, but just too little, too late here. Rook b7. And now rook b7 wasn't the most accurate move by Gligoric. I mean, either c4 promoting, trying to promote this pawn. So either c4 promoting, trying to promote this pawn. For instance, rook takes g7, c3, rook c7, king e4, g4, king d3. And that's all he would have left is those type of moves. King e2, g3, check, 4, rook bd1, rook c7, rook d3, and you get the point. He's not going to be able to stop this pawn from queening without extensive material loss. Gligoric plays rook b7, and here Tal played the move knight e3. Rook g5 will put up a little more resistance, with the idea of having a discovered check. For instance, rook b2, knight e3, king e6, king g3 protecting the f pawn, and now getting rid of that important c pawn. And then although black is still better, it's still not completely clear. Still a little murky. White may be even able to hold something like that, but it's predicated on eliminating black c pawn. So after knight e3, Gligoric just kept it real simple and went into a pure rook ending. Rook takes e3, giving back the exchange. F takes e3, rook c7, getting behind the pawn and just going to push it home. And Tal can't get his rook in position in time to stop it. And then the pawn just goes home. So knight e3 was the decisive mistake there. Rook g5 was better move. Again, after rook a6 c2, rook a1, there's nothing that can be done here. And Gligoric just played king d3, preparing c1 on the next move. So in the first match of the first game of the 1968 candidates quarterfinal between Tal and Gligoric, um, Gligoric played a brilliant game, withstanding the onslaught of a great tactician. Um, just basically, um, walking on hot coals, to win this end game, and all this in spite of a novelty and extreme extensive preparation by Tal and his seconds before the match. They knew he was going to play the Smyslov variation. They prepared for it. Um, Tal blitzed out his moves. They even had a novelty prepared, and Gligoric still found a way to come out with the victory. Um, at the end. So far it's one game to nothing in favor of the Yugoslav Grandmaster.